This primarily goes out to our podcast, which is about 50-50 women and men. But the video version primarily goes out to our obscure YouTube channel, which the analytics says is like 90% men. So we're primarily talking to the masculine here on the video side. And a warning, surrounded by police car revolving lights, fellas. If you hate truth, freedom, and freedom of speech, do turn this off now and do not watch or listen. So we've said it before, and we'll say it again, and we're going to keep saying it, and we're going to keep refining it. This shouldn't be a divisive, polarizing issue, but instead a universally agreed upon issue. It's also an issue which puts a magnifying glass on a storefront marketing pitch versus a real underlying reason. And from most conversations on the subject, especially in oligarchic-owned corporate media, they intentionally give a very both sides between truth and lies at least point of view, or a pure lie at worst point of view, when what should happen in free and open society is only giving pure truth. This is why our work has significantly more depth, because we seek underlying truth instead of storefront shallow wish-wash. Although the main paramount important thing in one's own self-development is pursuing truth, anytime you have a conversation with someone who is against abortion, 100% of the time, they will say or mention the word life. However, the whole framing of abortion using the word life is false. The truth about what this whole issue is really all about is control over women. So in regards to the control aspect, just not like all men have a lisp in their voice, feminizing it on the outside, only gay men have a lisp in their voice. Not all religious people are against abortion and even birth control, but only religious people are against abortion and even birth control. Specifically the type of extreme religious person who also happens to be in an end times death cult. Now our usual disclaimer of balance. No member of the exoteric outer religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Pastafarianism, etc., should feel discriminated against or persecuted for their faith as long as they keep it personal and hopefully light. Anyone can personally study and worship whatever flying spaghetti monster they so choose. But the more heavy and literal historical one takes these rather new man-made systems, the more they are based on male hierarchical domination, with, as previously discussed, deities and gods said to be males who are implied to be hierarchically above the female, and the more they will push that onto others. This is what imperial missionaries have been about through history, where the more extreme in the radicalization, the more it becomes convert heathens to the faith, rather than the attitude of let the faith stand on its own, or let those who are spiritually developed enough find it on their own. Imagine a group of controlling matriarchal women trying to pass laws saying men had to be castrated so they were not allowed to have sex drives, get boners, and produce or expel semen. So that would be lunatic women trying to control men, and we would fight them to our last breath. But when this basically goes the other way, being lunatic, extremely religious men trying to control women's sexual organs, those who think they are superior to women, even brainwashed women themselves, think this is remotely acceptable, because they believe their own death cult lies about life and being pro-life, when in reality they are just pro-control over the feminine and pro-anti-choice. Being anti-choice or anti-abortion or even anti-birth control has fuck all nothing to do with life. If they were really pro-life, they would care about the loss of species biodiversity globally or clear-cutting of the biome in the Amazon basin, which they do not. If they were really pro-life, they would care about the lives of migrant refugee children dying in the Darien Gap from Colombia to Panama, or the Mexican desert on the way to Texas or Arizona, or drowning in the Mediterranean, which they do not. If they were really pro-life, they would care about the horrendous living conditions of factory farm animals in American factory farms, or horrendous working conditions of women slaving in sweatshops in Bangladesh, which they do not. If they were really pro-life, they would care about the maternal health crisis of African American women due to structural and systematic racism at the core of the American healthcare system, which they do not. If they were really pro-life, they would care more about the lives of second graders than the Second Amendment, which of course they do not. If they were really pro-life, they would care about femicide of indigenous women, which they do not. And the real tell is if they were really pro-life, they would care about the lives of children living below the poverty line who are born into households where they are not wanted and unloved, which they do not, as well as acknowledging that in countries where abortion is not legal, it still happens just as often, but instead becomes more back alley and dangerous, leading to more female mortalities. What they really are is forced birth don't care about life because that removes the final decision from the woman. and turns her back into a mandatory baby factory. Limiting women's access to abortion and contraception is about power and control, specifically theocratic, patriarchal control over the divine feminine, full stop. Just like owning a gun does empower the individual, both birth control and abortion are tools which empower the feminine. The storefront marketing campaign against abortion, radiating out from marching orders from batshit crazy televangelist preachers, is to claim to be advocates for the unborn, which allows for a faux quasi-highest morality stance while then hiding their actual not giving a shit about the acorns which they claim are oak trees after they are born. The limiting of a choice to disempower the host in their minds supersedes claims of caring about the life of the seed. As evident by the fact that Christians in name only, with their big corporate tax-exempt money, are not funding adoption agencies. Also evident by the fact that Fash Theo Nightmare Dante's Inferno Project 2025 advocated in 2024 for slashing regulations of baby formula, as well as exploiting child labor by allowing minors to work in dangerous conditions with fewer protections. Doing some research of what life was like for women prior to the advent of birth control, which is a preventative, and abortion, which is a much more difficult decision but an available option of choice, and one will find that it was staggeringly more difficult and disempowering for them. Women were basically considered second class, completely subservient to males, and sperm dumpster repositories who were only valued for their bodies and their ability to continue the population instead of for their infinite other possibilities. Men are hornballs and always want sex. Women don't. So strong women in democratic society control sexual access. In more authoritarian past cultures like fascist Italy, women were pushed to have as many children as possible, by force. In more authoritarian countries of today, such as under the Afghani Taliban in Afghanistan, or even within the Christian wrong American-style Taliban, such as the New Apostolic Reformation, male-to-female rape within marriage is still covertly sanctioned within the cult. This is because then all young women within said cults can do is stay at home and raise children, even from a very young age. And the very people who lie that they are pro-life are actually pro-child marriage, which the majority of the time is being teenage or even preteen girls connected up with older men that also happen to embrace loopholes in statutory rape exemptions. So that young girls in said cult, or other religious cults such as within the heavily religious Orthodox Jewish community, then have little to no say in their own plans for education, independence, travel, career, political activity, and say of any sort outside of the household. This is why we are amazed when any woman is not lightly, but instead very, very heavily staunch religious, and why any woman who votes for authoritarianism is a contrary position, and can only be because of an indoctrination into off-balance systems of patriarchy. For the religions of empire have always disempowered the feminine. So women who are crusaders against their very own right to choose have been mind-controlled not to be only self-hating, but also self-disempowering. What we call the dark psychological caduceus, which is the mix of fascism and theocracy, which we pledge to you to never stop denigrating on because it's the core of modern-day empire, so you're welcome, comprises faux Christian sects that are into false Christian things like dominionism and have degraded the conservative majority of the Supreme Court, and they care only for power over anything else. This is evident by the fact that when they attain power, they reduce feminine rights instead of expanding feminine rights. They are regressive and contractive and not progressive and expansive. If they were really for progress and expanding rights, they would care about real-life freedom for the people. But since they only want regress and to contract rights of the people, what they mean by freedom is freedom to tell the people, especially the feminine side of the people, what to do. So the more a political party will lie about being pro-life and pro-freedom is because they recognize it can be used to tell women what to do. This is why when you use the same appeal of pro-life when you ask authoritarian regressives, who care only for power, to do something about gun violence killing our children in schools, it doesn't work. Because they don't really care about life and they don't want anyone telling them what to do. We've spoken before about women and men having complete equal value. So fellas, we're assuming those of you who still watch or listen to any of our content are not women-hating incel losers who find a home in the shadows of fascism. But even if you have had a rough relationship with your own mother, still respect women, and many of us have daughters. We happen to have a good relationship with our mother and have always had a very positive relationship with women, and they very much like us back. So even if we didn't have a young daughter who we treasure, and even if we only had a son, we'd still be writing this and saying this. We also have a specific dog in this fight because our wife is an OBGYN. And 1% of the time, she does have young, dumb female patients who overuse abortions as a form of birth control only because they've stupidly not used birth control. But 99% of the time, on the rare and unfortunate time she has to perform an abortion, such as for an ectopic pregnancy, neither of us have ever once done anything except for knowing she's doing anything other than helping women with their own healthcare decisions.